Be, I hope, that we're all going to learn this together, and that just like with AI being new, there's so much with accessibility that when you don't know what you don't know, it takes a while to build that capacity. So we'll learn together. My name is Donna Murray, as Vera was saying, and I think I do know most of the folks on the call, but just in case you've not talked with me before, I served in digital teaching and learning for the past 10 years at the agency, and recently in November shifted to a brand new position at the agency, the first ever digital accessibility specialist position, and am thrilled to be serving in that role and hopefully leading North Carolina down a path towards improving accessibility. And I apologize in advance for eating mints. I came home from NC Ties with COVID and I'm still coughing 2 months later. So I apologize for chewing on mints while we're talking, but the alternative is coughing fits. So thank you for grace. All right. So one of the other things that sometimes I forget to mention, which is a big part of this work, is that I'm co-leading some work around accessible educational materials. So we were very fortunate here in North Carolina to be part of a multi-state cohort with the National AIM Center, Accessible Educational Materials Center, for 4 years of intensive technical assistance to kind of help build a system and really build a team to come together and focus on ensuring that we have accessible educational materials for all students who need them. And so that work has been going on for 3.5 years now. There's so much of that work that has been going on behind the scenes, but trust me when I say that we've been really leveraging lots of expertise and skills across not just the agency, but even in other state organizations, and even with some of our districts, to say, this is what the current landscape is for accessible materials, and here's where we need to get to. And so how can we make that happen? And I co-lead that work with Crystal Patrick, who is a visual impairment consultant in the Office of Exceptional Children here at the agency. I call her my work BFF because we have been deep in the weeds in this work for quite some time now. And I honor her expertise, and we're so fortunate that we have consultants like Crystal in the Office of Exceptional Children to help us collaborate. This is not an EC thing. It does not live in an EC silo. The vast majority of our students with disabilities spend the vast majority of their time in a general ed classroom setting. So this is not an EC thing. This is an accessibility thing and a diverse learner thing, and it impacts all of us. So I always start off my presentation with a little bit about my personal why. Many of you, if not all of you, know that I have a daughter with multiple disabilities. She will be 19 next month, which is wild. And I swear I need some therapy for that. My daughter is an adult, but she has autism and she's in a wheelchair. She is, has very limited speaking ability. She can tell me when she wants some chicken nuggets or spaghetti, but other than that, she's never called me mama, but she said her alphabet backwards when she was 3. So there's so much going on in her mind that I just don't know about. And I have to presume competence. And even as her mother, no one could love her more fiercely than me. But sometimes I even forget to presume competence because it sometimes appears as if she's not engaging or taking in information around her. And the truth of the matter is she's taking it in. And sometimes she lets us know that she's taken it in, but it'll be 6 months down the road when she repeats something that we've said and uses it in context. So my job and our job as educators is to remove as many barriers as we can. And I think AI has tremendous capability to help us with that. It's a long road ahead. And today I'm going to talk with you about some of the tools that already exist that we're already using, and certainly would love to hear you add in the chat, or feel free to unmute and share out some tools that you know might can help with accessibility, because I'm certainly not the resident expert on all things AI. I think collectively we can be that. So I would love to hear your thoughts on some of the tools that you may have already been using with some of your students with disabilities. But I think there's certainly some challenges with that, just like there are with AI in general. So talking about how do we mitigate those risks and those challenges, and really just bring some awareness to the conversation about accessibility and disability through the lens of AI. So if you've been to any of my accessibility sessions before, the next couple of slides will look pretty familiar. I like to kind of level set with some language common definitions. And one of those is I challenge us to think about disability beyond the scope of the medical model. Olivia has pretty apparent physical disabilities. She's in a wheelchair. Again, her autism, she doesn't really make eye contact much. She doesn't have a lot of speaking ability. So at first glance, especially as she's a young adult now, you would probably very quickly be able to recognize that she has some disabilities. But at the end of the day, the medical model, this definition is pretty limited, because a disability is truly a mismatch between a person and their environment. And I'll give a personal example. 19 years now, Olivia has been a poor sleeper. She can sleep 2 hours a night, or she might sleep 12, and it's anybody's guess on what that might look like. And after 19 years of sleep deprivation, I have realized, and as I'm getting older too, I realized that the brain fog and inability to focus has only gotten worse over the years for me. So y'all, let me just tell you that I'm a living, breathing example of how AI is truly an accessibility tool for me, because I'm able to use tools like generative AI, like ChatGPT, to help be a thought partner. That's a mismatch between a person and their environment. It's Donna Murray, and her environment is that she is horribly sleep deprived pretty continuously. And so tools like AI help do some level setting for me, helps me. Again, it's a great thought partner. That's what I often say about using ChatGPT or other generative AI tools. And that's something I can leverage to be more efficient in my work, but also for personal reasons. I can use AI to help me process thoughts that typically may have been able to happen more organically. But now, again, as I've gotten older, and I again blame a lot on sleep deprivation for 2 decades, it's a tool that is now readily available in my toolbox to again level that playing field and save me some time. It's a mismatch between me and my environment. And so this is a picture that you've probably seen before in some of my presentations. Again, if you've come to one of my sessions on accessibility, this is a curb cut. It was intended for people like Olivia in a wheelchair to be able to have that 0 level entry from the sidewalk to the street, or vice versa. But it can help so many other people. And in my sessions, I challenge us to think about who else could it help. And I get responses like, someone delivering something, and so they've got like the hand trucks that they're using, or someone with a stroller, or someone with a physical handicap, a bad knee, something that's keeping them from being able to step up easily or step down easily. The idea here is that curb cut is universally designed. It may have been designed originally for someone with a disability, a medical model disability, but it really could help anyone who's having that mismatch between themselves and this environment. So if it's a teacher with all of his or her things, whether they're carrying them or dragging them behind them on wheels, a curb cut could help them as well, although that's probably not what it was intended for when it was created. So this idea of universal design has kind of led me down a path around learner variability. And one of the definitions I found about learner variability was that it's not just about how I differ from you in the ways that I learn. It's about how I even internally differ from one thing or one task or one context or one content area to another in myself. So this inner learner variability is also a thing. And if you've never seen it, we're not going to watch the TED Talk right now, but I did link to it here. The Myth of Average by Todd Rose is a great TED Talk where he talks about how building airplane cockpits for the pilots, they just focused on the average. We'll build this for the average sized, average, arm length, foot, leg length, all the things, pilot. And at the end of the day, what they figured out was that there was no average. So they basically had built it for no one because there was no flexibility in that, in the way it was designed. So they built it for an average person that truly didn't exist. So the Myth of Average is a great TED Talk to challenge us to think about this idea of disability being a mismatch between a person and their environment, and also to challenge us to think about so much variability that's in our classrooms. And so we talked about universal design with the curb cut, but universal design for learning is taking that and putting that educational lens on it. It's about ensuring that we've got different ways for our students to be able to engage, to have content represented to them that they can engage with, and multiple ways for our students to be able to express what they've learned. And I loved this analogy personally to help me think about UDL. If you think about the UDL, the on-ramp as being multiple ways for people to kind of on-ramp, our students to on-ramp to new content, that's a multiple ways for them to engage. That's that on-ramp. And then while we're deep in the weeds with the content that we're learning about, if students have different ways to have that information represented to them or to engage with that information in different ways, that's that traffic pattern. We all might have a different traffic pattern, but some options to those traffic patterns could be helpful with that learner variability in mind. And then the off-ramp is how they express their learning. How are they taking that learning, contextualizing it, and then being able to demonstrate that they've learned something? That's that off-ramp. And so giving some options is really what UDL is about. And I think, again, the AI can be leveraged for that. So again, excuse me, what we're going to talk about now are a sampling of some AI tools. And I have a few video clips embedded in some of these that hopefully our audio will work well for. But the idea here is not to share with you an exhaustive list. It's, in fact, you may look at these and say, Donna, I know about all of these tools. And I apologize in advance because I'm hoping that everyone at least sees something new in this. But I challenge us to start thinking about some of those tools that we're already familiar with. And as we're looking at new tools, that we just bring to the table this lens of accessibility. What are we looking for in these tools? Everyone on this call recognizes, like Kip was saying earlier, it's not just, and forgive me because I'm sure I'm going to misquote her, but she was saying, it's not about just the newness. We can't just try something out on Monday and use it on a Wednesday. We've got to start or continue looking at these tools with that lens, multiple lenses, but certainly a lens of accessibility. That's my challenge to you today, so that we can ensure that these tools can help address that learner variability. How can we leverage them to do that? So I just want to share with you a few tools, and the first tool I'm going to share is I'm going to share with you a few different things that I tried myself using that tool to think about how I could leverage it with learner variability of participants for sessions like this. So the first one is just Magic School. And so what I did here was just create a choice board around the topic of digital accessibility. What are some ways for us to practice what we learn about digital accessibility? And if you haven't been to a session on digital accessibility and you don't know what you don't know, excuse me, some of the things that we talk about include like making sure that we have a textual description for images. So one assignment for this choice board was to create alt text, write a description for an image that is helpful for visually impaired users. So again, all I did was take the Magic School tool and say, I want folks to be able to kind of demonstrate their learning, practice some of the strategies that we may learn in a digital accessibility session, and just asked it to create a choice board. And honestly, I was pretty pleased because my prompt was pretty broad, pretty generic. So I appreciate that it gave me some, I believe I said in the prompt that I wanted some pretty short activities, not something that would be labor intensive, something that you could learn about that accessibility feature and then turn around and pretty quickly be able to demonstrate or practice some learning with that. The next thing I asked in Magic School was with the 5 questions tool to challenge us to deepen our thinking on the topic. And so the left side here shows the prompt. I had just picked grade level university. And then a very simple prompt of give me questions related to digital accessibility for people with disabilities. And honestly, I really like these questions. They're pretty deep. And I think it definitely challenges us to think about how digital accessibility challenges us to think deeper about digital accessibility, which is what the tool was for. So things like, can you design an innovative tool or feature that could address a specific accessibility challenge that is not effectively covered by current solutions? That's a pretty deep question. But again, it's just an opportunity for me to use these AI tools to help me process what are some things that I could challenge us to think about as we're talking about digital accessibility. The next one I tried was the depth of knowledge questions. So I just did a screenshot here of the level 3 and level 4 questions that came back out. What I did here was not a prompt. I uploaded a fact sheet about a new rule on accessibility. We're going to talk about that later in our session today. And I just said, give me some DOK level 3 and 4 questions, or that's the screenshot. I have the level 1 and 2 that it gave me as well, but excuse me. But it gave me some of those strategic and extended thinking prompts that I think would be great, especially if we had longer time today to think about how does this new fact sheet on this new rule, what are some things that we need to consider, and how can we have some deeper conversations about things that we need to process with the information in that rule. And then another thing that I did with Magic School was just said, help me with some common misconceptions about accessibility, digital accessibility. And they were pretty on point. Again, my prompt was pretty broad, pretty simple. And I love that it spit out something like, 1, accessible design is only relevant for people with disabilities. I think this challenges us to think about beyond the medical model again. And the next one is that it's too time consuming and too expensive, which is also a misconception when it comes to making a website accessible. So those are just a few examples of just using Magic School to address some learner variability, to be able to scaffold some of the conversations. And again, I did this through a lens of professional learning attendees, but obviously could be a tool that we could use with our students to address some learner variability. Now I want to talk about a few other tools that, again, maybe you're familiar with, or you may not be, that I think are the types of tools that are freely, readily available, that could truly, especially for some of our students with learning disabilities, like an visually impaired or hearing impaired, or even some of our students like my daughter Olivia who have mobile disabilities, some things that are already in existence that are being used that can truly change the way they access information. So I'm going to, Vera and team, if you will remind me, I'm not paying attention too closely to the chat because I've got my screen pulled up. So please stop me if there's questions or if I need to address something in the chat. The first thing I want to talk about here is called Project Relate. And I've got a short video clip I'll show you in a second, but I pulled the stat from the website, the Project Relate website. And because it was such a telling stat to me. It said that 250 million people are estimated to have non-standard speech. Now, my daughter would be included in that. In fact, honestly, my son, who is 24, might be included in that number as well, because he has a speech impediment. So they're estimated to have non-standard speech. They are, when we say that, we mean individuals who may experience difficulty making their words understood. Now, if you think about tools like speech to text, that's a problem. Speech to text is a great type of AI tool that we can leverage for students and adults. But if you have non-standard speech, then that's not going to be difficult to manage. So Project Relate is kind of bridging that gap. And so I have a short video clip that kind of demonstrates what that looks like.
This is an example of Dmitry Konevsky. He's a Google researcher and an inventor, and he's using his personal speech recognition model. So here goes. Let's see if we can play this clip.
We need to make all voice interactive devices be able to understand any person who speaks to them.
Okay, so the transcription is make all voice interactive devices be able to understand any person speak to them. So it was not perfect. He said any person who speaks to them, but it was pretty close after he was using his own personal model. So the app that Dimitri is using is called Project Relate, that anyone can use to build their own personalized speech model.
So I love that. It's an opportunity. You can see that AI is already expanding beyond what I think without that speech impediment, would even thought was possible. I can do speech to text because I can speak clearly, hopefully. But for users who have that non-standard speech, this is a game changer because they can leverage now those types of AI tools that I think sometimes we take for granted are just readily available for us to be able to do speech to text. Another one is personal voice. And I don't know if you've seen this one or not, but I was totally amazed and honestly a little bit heartbroken that my mother passed away last October. And then I think I found this in November and had wished so much that I had come across this tool before she passed away. This allows Apple has this personal voice that will allow you to record up to 150 phrases. I've done it. Does take about 15 minutes. And so it just shows you the phrase on the screen and you just read it aloud. It will generate your personal voice. And you may say, well, why do I need kind of a digitized voice if my voice is fine? But think about, especially if you know that you're at risk for losing your voice. Maybe you have an illness, a disability, a medical model disability that you can foresee that your voice is going to be affected. This is going to enable you to capture that voice and then have that personalized voice that can be used for live speech. I think about some of our persons with autism who may have difficulty in social settings being able to speak aloud. If they can record their personal voice and then be able to use live speech, you can even set it up so that you have some phrases already, some canned phrases already prepared, so that if I'm meeting someone new, I can hit the button and it would say, "Hi, my name is Donna Murray. I'm a digital accessibility specialist at NCDPI." I can set that up so that that's a standard phrase if that's something I'm going to be saying often. Or I can type into the live speech and it will speak that out using my personal voice. That's amazing to me. Just knowing that you can have, and it's pretty on point. When I play it, it's a little bit, there's a couple words here and there where you can tell it sounds a little robotic, but I can tell it's Donna Murray talking, which I think is just a phenomenal usage of AI. Another one that I've shared in a lot of my presentations, so forgive me again if this is repetitive to you, but Seeing AI is just such a tremendous tool. It's a Microsoft tool that enables you it was designed with people with visual impairments in mind. But it can be so useful for everybody. I think about our students with disabilities. I think about our younger students who are just learning about vocabulary and how to label things in the classroom. I think about our English, our multi-language learners as they're diving into English and as well as their native languages. Excuse me, I'm going to grab another minute. What I can do with the CNAI app, which is completely free, is hold my phone over everything from short text, which is interesting because as soon as you open that camera, it starts reading anything, any words it can see. But it totally allows me to interact with my environment by reading any short text that's around me. It will also recognize people and let you know how far away they are from you. It will read information, product information by scanning the QR code. It will, as you can see in the images here, it will actually let you know about the amounts of currency that you have. It will also scan and read a full document for you that then you can actually copy and paste. You can have it read aloud, but you can also copy and paste the text or share the text to a doc. It's just a tremendous tool. There's not a screenshot on here, but one of the other things it can do is actually in live time, it will label your environment. So again, think about our students who are multi-language learners. Think about, you know, our kindergarten teachers who may have things labeled around the room, but then you go on a field trip, things aren't labeled. It enables you to have that app in the cafeteria or on that field trip and be able in real time to scan around the room and have these interactive labels that label the table, the chairs, the windows, so that it's more of an immersive experience trying to navigate the world. So intended for people with visual impairments, can be helpful for so many. That's what I think about when I think about this idea of UDL and accessibility partnering with AI. Google Lookout is very similar. So you can see I just took a screenshot here or a picture of a screenshot from the app that kind of is laid out very similarly to the CNAI app that Microsoft has. So I can explore the world, which you see here is in beta. I can also look at food labels and currency and text and documents, very similar again to what we were looking at with the CNAI. These are apps that are readily available, completely free. I love, love, love the Be My Eyes app. The Be My Eyes tool is for folks who are blind or have visual impairments to be able to access their world. It used to be strictly through this volunteer basis. So I have signed up to be a volunteer on the Be My Eyes app. And when I get a phone call, as soon as I answer it, I see what the caller, I see what their camera is pointing at. So this example on the screen, this person is looking at a remote control, looks like a TV remote control. And so if I was a volunteer, I would answer, and this is what I would see, whatever their camera is open to and pointing at in front of them. And so they might ask a question like it's prompted here on the screen, which button is the HDMI button? So if someone has a visual impairment, it's truly it's a person volunteer. I don't know their number. They don't know mine. We don't even have to exchange names, but they can just ask their question and I can help them navigate their visual environment. That has gone to the next level now. So it's a great tool, but certainly requires human volunteers to help, which can certainly be helpful with the context of a human interacting with them. That can be a game changer. But now they've taken it a step further and added AI into this platform. And it must be, I'm making an assumption here, but I was going to say it must be working pretty well because I can't tell you the last time I had a volunteer phone call from Be My Eyes. So it sounds like the Be My AI is a layer for this tool that uses an AI capabilities so that potentially users with visual impairments don't even need to call a volunteer. They can always request that they, if the AI tool is not doing what they need, they can still request to call a volunteer. But I imagine that this gives some independence to users with visual impairments, and then having that choice of being able to interact with humans. A human volunteer then is exactly that, their choice. So here's an example of Be My AI from the Be My Eyes app in use by someone with a visual impairment.
There's a number of apps that allow us to take a picture and get a description of the scene, but with the integration of GPT-4 in Be My Eyes, now we can get even more scene description and ask more important follow-up questions. So I'm gonna take a picture of the scene in front of me. I'm hoping maybe there's a bench for me to sit on. I'm getting tired.
Take picture button. Take picture dimmed. Analyzing picture, please wait. The picture shows an outdoor scene with a man sitting on a bench. The bench is located under a structure with a roof that is supported by columns. The man is wearing sunglasses, a black jacket, and jeans. He is sitting with his legs crossed and appears to...
Okay, so we got a lot of really good information, including that there is a bench and a man sitting there. I think this man, I might want to sit next to him and talk to him. But for me, as somebody who's blind, what's even more important is to know what side of the bench can I sit on. I don't want to sit on this man's lap. So I'm going to ask a follow-up question and find out what side of the bench he's on.
Ask more button. Message text field. Message text field is editing.
What side of the bench is the man sitting on?
Inserted. What side of the bench is the man sitting on? Clear text. Send message button. Send message. Please wait. Be My AI is writing a message. Be My AI. The man is sitting on the left side of the bench.
Now I know that the right side of the bench is free, and for me, that's more important information than just some kind of general description of the scene in front of me.
So you can see, again, he could have called a volunteer. You may have seen that on his phone. There was a link to call a volunteer, but he was able to navigate not just the scene with kind of an image description, a blanket image description, and then we're done. He was able to ask follow-up questions. So I love how we're leveraging tools like ChatGPT-4 to further enhance tools that are available for users like this, users with visual impairments. All right. So some other tools that I have shared in here, things like Perplexity. I just put an example in here of a prompt, how can AI support students with disabilities? And I love that this one, this specific tool gives me an opportunity to have some launch points. So I think about our students, even our adults who you just don't know where to start. I love that tools like Perplexity not only give us some answers to the prompt, but also share some resources with us so that then we can kind of launch from there and hopefully find the deep dive we're looking for. Goblin Tools is another one that I love that is great when we think about our students, especially our students who may have executive functioning challenges, because, for example, the Magic To Do option in Goblin Tools allows you to set, I love how they use red peppers. You can change the spiciness of how deep you want to break things down. I think it's on a scale of 1 to 5 or 1 to 6 peppers. And so I had just put in here, create a 1-hour presentation about AI and accessibility for K-12 education leaders. And then I was able to break down and continue breaking down into subtasks, starting with research. So it gave me research current information, and I said, break that down more, break that down more. And then as a teacher, I could even go in here and it will even estimate about how long it's going to take to complete these tasks. And then I can rearrange, or I can help a student monitor their in progress and rearrange and organize and really help scaffold to the level of need that that student has, and hopefully also help them advocate and develop strategies themselves so that they can begin using tools like this to break down large tasks. Reading Progress is a tool within Microsoft Teams that's available to help our students not only get an idea of their reading progress. So it has like these embedded reading records that students can record themselves reading that then a teacher can then go and listen to, and it will track errors and accuracy and speed, all of that. So being able to have a student independently check their influency is great, but I love this video clip I'll show that talks about how students are then also able to track their own progress. So think about how this integrates with personalized learning And again, with UDL and learner variability, this has given students an opportunity to own part of their learning and to also see that progress themselves.
Now.
It probably helps me be a better reader because I can actually listen to myself. And if I did say a word wrong or something, I'd be able to say it better than next time because I know that I said it wrong.
Struggling readers, they struggle, so they avoid reading. And by avoiding reading, they struggle even more. And so it's been really cool to watch how my kids are, reading more at home. They're more excited to read in the classroom. They have their personal goals that they've made, not me. And so they're excited to work.
Coming from an administrative perspective is that this isn't just a classroom tool. Because we have so much access to data, that this is a powerful tool to change the learning trajectory of a building. But watching her grow in her reading, it's been a joy for me. I used to love reading as a child, and I wanted that for her.
Now that we use the app, I'm more confident. I'm less worried about it. Get worried about a lot of things, but reading.
Sorry. So I love in that video clip, if you noticed, they could set their own goals, but they can also kind of do some self-assessment. I mean, she's able to recognize, okay, I didn't do well on that word, but I've been practicing and now I think I've got it. It's just an opportunity for our students to help own some of their own learning and to be able to set goals, be able to to work on understanding that data and what that looks like, but also to improve their skills. And tools like Reading Progress through Microsoft are just one of many that exist out there that can help them with that. There are a few other tools that I want to mention before we move on to challenges. And one of those is the Microsoft Translator. If you're not familiar with this, it's quite amazing. You can actually download the app, share a conversation code with other participants, and literally there's different ways you can set it up. So I can have it set so that anything I speak, it translates to another language, but I can also have the screen so it's divided in half. So you could be standing on one side and I could be standing on the other. And when I speak, it translates it and it's turned the other direction so that you can easily read it. And we can have a translated conversation right at the table on each side of the phone. So think about how that can change what a parent-teacher conference would look like for someone who speaks a different language, for some of our multi-language learner families. That changes the way we communicate rather than having to wait for a newsletter to get translated before we can send it home. We can translate on the spot. And of course, Microsoft Translator is not the only tool that does that, but I love that, that these types of tools exist out there. This is an example of how Microsoft Translator is used at a school for the deaf, and gives just a couple ideas about how they're leveraging these types of tools, and actually multiple tools. If you watch the whole video, they talk about how they have ASL translators and they have all these different pieces, but how they added Microsoft Translator as one of the tools to help with communication.
RIT has 9 different colleges. And NTID, the National Technical Institute for the Deaf, is one of those 9 colleges. We are the world's largest mainstream program for deaf and hard of hearing people. We have the world's largest interpreting services, as well as the captioning group. It's the largest, but we still cannot keep up with the growth and the need for access services. So we decided to use Microsoft Translator as an additional communication tool, which can help RIT on its journey to scale.
Microsoft Translator uses AI to provide another really strong bridge for the gap that has been there so long.
As a deaf person, I want the exact same information that my hearing friends have.
Presentation Translator was easier than we thought it would be. You really just have to click it, and the software automatically reads the content and everything that you have within the PowerPoint system. The Cognitive Services Custom Speech Recognition is critical for capturing vocabulary words that wouldn't be necessarily conventional in everyday life. Students can pick any language that they choose to receive the information. If the professor has chosen English, which they speak, then I can choose whatever language I learn in best.
Do you guys play any video games?
Students can use the app to initiate a conversation with others.
So now that I have my phone, I can see exactly what was said.
There are barriers to communication everywhere, but I think it's time we look at the barriers as opportunities, and then they can be broken down. Microsoft Translator has the ability to provide opportunities to reach out to everyone.
And I love this as a follow-up to that video. There's an article that's linked in the previous slide. And this was some of the feedback from the professor and the students. The professor said it's really changed when they come to my office. They don't come with, I missed this word or I've missed this definition. They come with, I don't know why this applies to this. It's changed the focus for us. So it's taken the focus off of capturing the information and allows the students to truly focus on the content. And I love this next part. When the one student who was deaf in her evolutionary biology class, who was piloting the ASR system during the fall semester, dropped the course, Connolly turned off the captions. The hearing students revolted. Presentation Translator ran for the entire semester. This is not just about our students who have a qualifying disability that enables them to have an IEP or a 504. It certainly can be absolutely essential for them, but tools like this can be helpful for everyone. So I love that feedback. I know we've got a little more than half an hour, and in classic Donna Murray fashion, I think I've packed too much information in here. So forgive me if I not skip through, but go through a couple slides quickly. I definitely want to get to part of the conversation today where we're talking not just about some of the tools, but also about some of the challenges. And then I want to definitely talk with you about this new rule that I mentioned earlier. So live presentations in Microsoft PowerPoint is the same, not the same. It's very similar, kind of what they were mentioning in the previous video. It enables users to be able to have that content, the speech to text right there on their screen. But the live presentation in Microsoft PowerPoint also allows the user to be able to navigate the slides as they need to.
Live presentations in
Mute this and show it and kind of talk over it a little bit. So it allows a user to scan or have the shortcut link and be able then, as you can see, to not only have the presentation up on whatever presentation mode screen you have, but then the user can also jump to the current slide or navigate to a different slide, and then of course have those subtitles in whatever language they need right there on the screen. Love it. Google's Live Translate is another tool. Notice that not only is it translating for me, it literally is superimposing the translated word on top of the sign, which I just think is an amazing way to utilize AI. So it's instant text translation, but again, you can see here in this example, it superimposed the English word exit on top of, and I don't know what language that is, on top of the word sortie. Which I assume means exit. So instant text translation with Google Live Translate. And then the next couple of slides, I just want to mention how things like generative AI, and I mentioned this briefly earlier, how generative AI like ChatGPT can really help our students who might have neurodiversity challenges, cognitive delays, really any kind of medical model disability that I can think of, I think could benefit from this, but also just that bigger definition of disability, that mismatch. So I think about our students with autism. Think about how generative AI can help them. The examples that I've read online from users sharing their stories is that they can have this real-time conversation support. They can work on these conversation scripts ahead of time, and that can help them reduce anxiety and increase their confidence when they're having a social interaction with someone. Again, it can help with those executive functioning skills by helping with planning. And I love this idea that it can be a non-judgmental space for folks with autism to be able to practice those social interactions. I love that. It's kind of like someone had said, it's like a digital assistant, but it's also kind of like this, this robot friend, if you will, to help me process what a social interaction might be like, and so that I can work on my conversational skills on how I want that to go, which I imagine would be a great, would certainly support reducing anxiety. And in ADHD, this was a couple of quotes from a user, and it looks like I didn't put the reference in here, so I'll go back and link it. But this was a user experience, someone with ADHD, who talks about using tools like ChatGPT. The chatbot helps me stay focused because it offers real-time answers and the ability to ask follow-up questions for better results. My thinking and writing processes are not linear. ChatGPT affords me a controlled chaos. And I thought, oh, I could have written that. It does. It's kind of that thought partner. It helps me with a controlled chaos. It helps me get started. It helps me move past mental blocks. It helps me return when I get distracted. It keeps me focused and moving forward. And that's just, I've tried to embed some user experiences in here so that you're hearing from persons with disabilities. But as someone who struggles with attention myself, I felt like I could have written this for me. It affords me a controlled chaos. There are tools that can also help you process information. I have to admit, I've not tried Audio Pen. I've just read about it and read some user experiences with it. But this enables you to kind of, if you like to think out loud, it captures your thinking out loud and then helps organize those thoughts. So I don't know about you, but I still have a paper notebook where even though I'm quite digital and I'm always online, this is just where I jot things down as they come to my head. Then I go back and think, I have no idea what that meant. So I think about Audio Pen as being a great way for me to just kind of do a brain dump and then have Audio Pen help me organize those thoughts a bit. So that's an AI tool that I think would be helpful for folks that do appreciate having an opportunity to think out loud. Tools like AutoDraw, something where you're getting some assistance with some, you see here, someone was trying to draw a bike, and the suggested icons it was spitting back out at me included some bikes, but maybe also some eyeglasses. This is just another tool with that idea in mind of helping with some autocomplete, especially for those of us who are artistically challenged. Text Blaze is another one. This is just another tool where I can work on the efficiency and eliminate errors by having some templates set up. So in the example here in the screenshot, he typed in /intro. And then in the demo, it shows that it replaces that with some basic information about Eric Smith and what he does, so that it's just an easier way for someone, think about someone with a mobility issue or someone who just has difficulty with writing, to be able to leverage a tool like this to do what they need to do. In this case, simply sharing an introduction. GitHub Copilot is just, Microsoft has this AI tool called Copilot. And I know this video is a couple minutes long, but I think it's worth it to give you a good insight into how something like Copilot can assist folks with doing things even as intensive as coding. And so I appreciated that this user shared his experience about how he uses AI Copilot on GitHub in order to become a more proficient coder, but he also talks about how it helped him with his motivation.
My name is Anton and I'm from Ukraine. As a freelance developer living with cerebral palsy, tasks like typing and speaking can be difficult, which limits my ability to communicate effectively. My first laptop only had DOS, and there were no accessibility features available. To type a parenthesis, I had to press Shift+9, but I could only use one finger, so I had to hold Shift with my nose. If you try working like that, you'll quickly understand why I couldn't afford to fix my code many times. I realized early on that I was different from others and encountered discrimination and inequality at a young age. At that time, I was torn between stereotypes about disabled individuals and my own abilities. And I managed to learn that language in 1 month. So I started to learn more and more programming languages. I was about 14 when I created my first program. Later on, it became easier for me to write code as I learned about autocomplete. I learned Git and started using private repositories. I always inform my clients about my disability. Moreover, I present it as an advantage because it provides me with extensive experience in solving complex and unconventional problems. When I first heard about GitHub Copilot, I was doubtful that it could handle such a complex task as coding. But I was surprised at how helpful and relevant the suggestions it gave me were. Sometimes, it even seemed like it could read my mind because it would suggest code that I hadn't thought of yet. Although this particular aspect of AI may not be widely discussed, it possesses the power to counter my pessimism by presenting optimistic alternatives, helping me overcome mental challenges. I can now not only write the code itself but also detailed comments, documentation, and project descriptions. Previously, I physically couldn't afford to do this. I firmly believe that AI has enormous potential to make a positive impact on the lives of people with disabilities. Through my active engagement in studying machine learning and conducting research, I aim to harness the power of AI for the betterment of our lives.
I love that. So I just pulled one of Anton's quotes here. And I hope you caught the part where he talks about it kind of balanced his pessimism by giving him some optimistic solutions. And I love that. He's leveraging the tool not only because it enables him physically, but is also supporting his cognitive function and probably his executive functioning, and just really being kind of a cheerleader in his work. It's a problem-solving tool. Okay, so before we jump into some challenges, I just wanted to share a couple of accessibility tools that are actually in existence to help accessibility. So the Microsoft Accessibility Bot, and this is an example of something that I put in as a prompt. It will help you if you're trying to address an accessibility issue or to use an accessibility functionality of a Microsoft product. You can type in your question, and it's going to get it's a chat bot to help you to learn more about whatever that functionality is or to answer your accessibility question. So I had just put in, how can I make my Word document into an accessible PDF? And this was the response that it gave me. So it starts telling me exactly how to, how to add tags, and then what this looks like with Windows versus a Mac. So it's just an accessibility bot that I think is helpful for us as we're designing accessibility things, or if we're using products and we don't know much about the accessibility features. And I thought this was really interesting. I linked to the full blog here, but Open University in the UK, they had a process already in place where if you were a student with a disability, then to request support, you had to fill out a form and you had to talk on the phone with an advisor to figure out what supports you needed and what they could put in place while you were at school. They developed an alternate form completion process with a chatbot called Taylor. And what they did is they took their data set was the forms and then the dialogue between the students during those conversations, and that was their data set. And what they have now is that this chatbot becomes this more organic conversation for a student who has a disability to engage with Taylor, the chatbot. And it leverages that conversation, this kind of free-form conversation with the chatbot, to guide the students through the step of the process. And it also will interpret responses so that it will automatically fill out some of those forms. I love this because oftentimes I think it's difficult, or in my research, I read how difficult it is for some users to be open about their disabilities or to even know what kind of supports they might need to ask for, especially in an academic setting like secondary ed. And I love that this is leveraging the AI tool to make that part more conversational, and also to just, really focus on the needs of the students rather than this just being about, completing a form and asking for some supports. I love that this is more organic. So let's talk about those challenges. I don't think it surprises anyone when I say that there's disability bias within our AI tools. And so these are some of the examples and challenges that I think, based on my research and readings, that I think we're facing when it comes to the bias of accessibility or disability within AI. We know that AI relies on averages. And so right out of the gate, that's a struggle, because if we don't have AI responding through that lens of thinking about the extremes, then we're not really addressing the users with disabilities. Other things are things like missing data or having disability labels not included in the data. So that knowledge base is just lacking that whole lens of disability, or doesn't have a full picture. Things that we're familiar with other biases in AI, things like hallucination or false confidence, thinking that AI knows more than it does about disability, excuse me. And even things like, I read an article about accessible verification. So if a user with disability, the example they gave was like, it was an image of Hillary Clinton on stage. And the alt text that the AI tool spit back out was not even about a person on a stage. It was so off the charts wrong. But as a user with a disability, if I'm using that to help describe an image, I'm taking that at face value. I'm assuming that it's correct. So there's not really this feedback loop built in to be able to verify that that content is actually accessible. One of the things that I think you're going to hear me say many, many times over the next few years is that users with disabilities are often not included in the design. And that leads to not only not having that data in the system and getting some feedback from users with disabilities, but it also means that we have inaccessible AI tools. And so the majority of our rest of our time together this morning is going to be talking about the accessibility or inaccessibility of the AI tools themselves. So we have bias in the tools, and that's not going to be fixed overnight, but part of it is just an awareness and understanding that we've got to be challenging and asking questions about the data sets that our AI tools are using. Here's another example of, as we're talking about inaccessible AI tools, one of the things that we see pretty commonly now, even on tools like our social media tools like Facebook, is that there's an AI tool embedded that will automatically add alt text. So if I have an image and someone has a visual impairment and can't access it, there's a textual description of the image. That sounds great because it takes a long time to write good alt text. And so I appreciate that there's some tools, some AI tools to help with that. But there's some contextual pieces and some human interaction that's really needed to ensure that alt text is accurate. Sometimes it can't distinguish between informative and decorative images. Sometimes it's not specific enough. Sometimes the auto alt text can be a little bit inaccurate or very inaccurate. Again, it could be missing some context, and it could even have that identification bias built in. So the AI tools that exist to help with alt text really should be considered as kind of a starting point. It's kind of like your thought partner, but make sure that you're looking at that alt text and adjusting it through the context of whatever your image is. Another thing, as we're talking about accessibility of AI tools, I want to kind of just share with you a couple of AI tools where I literally just took an AI tool, layered on a tool called Wave, which is, you probably can't see that because I'm sharing a different tab, so hold on. The wave.webaim.org website allows you, there is I've got it built into my browser. I've got the browser extension added to my bookmark toolbar thing, but there's also a place for you to literally just copy and paste a URL in here and have a website checked for accessibility. Now, this is an automated tool only, and typically automated tools can capture as little as 20% of errors. So automated tools should not just be the only thing that you use when you're evaluating for accessibility. But for our conversation today, I just wanted to give you a quick overview of how this automated evaluation tool looks when I evaluate some of the AI tools that I've talked about today. So here's one for example. I used the Raina chatbot in Magic School AI and just said, how can I use AI tools to support diverse learners? And so this was a screenshot of the page and the response that I got. And I used the Wave accessibility evaluation tool to see if the page with the prompt and the response was accessible to someone who might be like using a screen reader, someone who needs some of those accessibility features. And this is the result. So we could do multiple sessions on how to use the wave tool and what all of these errors mean, but just to kind of give you a broad overview of what happened when I evaluated, there were 7 errors. There was no color contrast errors, so that's good. 6 alerts, and what that means is that there's not enough information for the AI tool to know whether or not it's an error. It would require some human context. So there might be alt text that it thinks is not adequate, so it would require you to kind of take a look. It also talks about like additional features that are in there and even how the page is structured. And so this is an example of that particular page and what the structure looks like. So if you've been to any of my sessions, you know, we talk about how the heading structure matters. And so in this instance, you can see that the way the navigation is set up on this page, it jumps straight to a heading 5. And then in the main section of the page, it goes from heading 1 to heading 2 to heading 1. And typically when we talk about the structure of a page being accessible, the heading structure should have one heading 1, and then of course kind of built like an outline. I should be able to navigate the page with those heading structures. So the structure of the page has really not been built accessibly. Here's another example, the audio pen. I just took the home page. I wasn't even using the tool yet. I just took the audio pen home page, and these were the results. So there were 13 missing alternative texts on the images that didn't have alt text on the main page. There were some redundant links. So this just gives you an idea to say their main page is not accessible. And I didn't even go into actually using the tool. And I'm not just calling out those 2 specific, honestly, I just picked 2. I wasn't trying to call out specifically Magic School and Audio Pen, but this is pretty typical. When I look at websites and tools, typically there's accessibility issues right out of the gate. And so one of the things that you may hear about when we talk about accessibility, and you might even have something like this in your district, is how we use something called an overlay. So this is a type of AI where it's software that transforms the website so that it can be understood. Basically what it is it overlays on top of the code and says, okay, this looks like an accessibility error, so we're going to try to fix it. So it's this automated process. Again, it's machine learning that's going to overlay on that website and try to fix anything that's broken. That sounds great, doesn't it? But user experiences, users with disabilities have said it can make websites harder to navigate, and it can actually make things worse for users with assistive technologies. So what we have to do is start thinking about making content accessible in the design part, not just trying to fix it by putting an overlay. And so I'm going to see if I can head to this example. I'm going to have to copy and paste it to get it right back in this window that I'm sharing, because this has audio. Forgive me, don't let me make you dizzy. So this is an example of an overlay not being used and then an overlay being used. So for the first few seconds, you're going to hear what it sounds like when an overlay is not being used, and then how this page actually had an overlay on top of it and how it made things worse. Basically, this is a screen reader reading icons like, I think they're reading the icons for social media, like Instagram, Facebook. And this is what a screen reader would hear.
TikTok, link, Instagram, link, Facebook, link, TikTok external link.
Oh, sorry. So those first few seconds you heard, it was like Instagram, link, Facebook, link. That's just the raw code being read with a screen reader. Now this is what happens when that same information had this overlay on top of it.
Opens link in new window. Link. External link. Link. Opens link in new window. Link. Instagram external link. Opens link in new window. Link. External link. Link. Opens link in new window. Link. Facebook external link. Opens link in new window. Link. External link. Link. Opens link in new window. Link.
Yeah, I think that kind of speaks for itself there. So overlays can sometimes make things worse. This comes back to the conversation that we've got to talk about how to design with accessibility in mind, rather than trying to overlay something on top of it to fix it. Here's another example. This was a page that uses an overlay where, this was interesting to me. You did a wave evaluation And because the overlay, this particular overlay was user way, the user way manipulates the page content to make everything appear to be accessible so that when you do the wave evaluation, it shows no errors. Whew. So overlays can be really tricky, and it's important for us to recognize that an overlay is a type of machine learning that looks great at the surface and seems like it can fix broken accessibility issues for us. But it really isn't necessarily doing that, and oftentimes can make things worse. So something to consider when we're thinking about, I encourage you to take a look at your district webpage and see if you use an overlay, and hopefully we can start brokering some conversations around whether or not that's truly making things more accessible or not. And while this may not sound like it relates directly to AI, it's actually a broader scope thing that we want to finish our conversation with today. But I want to mention how this new ADA Title II rule is really going to impact our conversation moving forward when it comes to instructional materials, including AI. So if you are part of our tech director group where we have our bi-weekly meetings, then you've already received some information about this, and we've talked about this a little bit in the past. But last week, a regulatory rule was finalized and published into the Federal Register that specifically states a technical standard for accessibility that is going to be required for all state and local governments to comply with within 2 to 3 years, depending on the population of your city or county. Yeah, Vera. Now, part of me, super stoked that we have a regulatory rule that now explicitly says this is the technical standard for accessibility that our content must meet. The other part of me is having a permanent panic attack about trying to think about how we're going to make this happen within 2 to 3 years. I have no doubt that we can, but it's going to be a group effort. And just know that this is like step 1, part A of me just getting the word to you today that this rule is in place and we are going to have to address accessibility. That's the part of me that's excited. The part of me thinking about building capacity statewide with all of our educators and all of our education leaders to ensure that we comply within 2 to 3 years is making me a little nervous, but we're going to get there. This is an opportunity for me to bring this to the table to say, as we're talking about AI tools, we have to have this lens. So just know that there will be a tremendous amount of support and resources coming your way over the next 2 years, but it's definitely going to be a partnership for us to think about how do we vet for accessibility, not just with our AI tools, but with all instructional content, so that we can make sure that, one, we're compliant, but more importantly, that we're inclusive and that we're taking down barriers for kids like my girl. So it does include digital instructional materials. There are some limited exceptions, and we'll talk over the next year about what those exceptions are and what that means for you and what that means for your teachers. But essentially, I want to elevate this conversation that this ADA has always included digital. It's just never explicitly had a set standard of requirements for accessibility. So now it does. So now we have a very clear path on what the expectation is, and I'm going to help you make sure that we can meet that. So if you're interested, this is a screenshot where I actually used the tool Diffit, and I plugged in the fact sheet on the new rule, and this was the 1 paragraph kind of adapted reading passage that it spit back out. And honestly, it's a pretty good summary to give you an idea of what that new rule is about. The short of it is, our content has to be accessible. So I have linked in here the compliance start date spreadsheet that I have. It's based on the census population to give you an idea of whether or not your school district will have 2 or 3 years and what that deadline will be for starting compliance. It won't be a one and done, but we'll need to be compliant by that date to start with. And if you are a charter schools are not included on this specific spreadsheet, but if you are from a charter school, it's going to be based on the lowest number of years for any of the districts that are part of your service area. So if Alamance Burlington Schools is part of your service area as a charter school, then than your 2 years to compliance. So I don't mean to leave you with a panic attack today. Trust me, I'm going to carry that load for you. We're going to work on this together and ensure that not only are our AI tools accessible, but that we're having conversations with vendors to ensure that our instructional materials, regardless if it's AI, are accessible. And the good thing is, this is not just a North Carolina thing. This will be a national thing. So I think it's going to be great that our ed tech partners and vendors, they're going to have to step up to the plate and make their content more accessible. Because in 2 to 3 years, the entire nation is going to be asking those vendors to have accessible content, or they're going to have to not be able to use it, or they're going to have to find one of those exceptions to meet. So I think this is an opportunity for us to really push in with vendors and say, it's got to be accessible. Let's partner together to make that happen. So much more, much more to come. But just know that this is part of the conversation when we're talking about AI. I do have kind of this simple form that if you have any, if your mind's already spinning about questions related to the rule, there is a form here that you can go and just plug that in. You can certainly just reach out to me if that's easier. We can jump on a call, but I hope that I am not pushing my panic attack on you. I'm going to help you through this. This is going to be a collaborative work. But if you do have questions that come to mind, please feel free to reach out or to add to the form. So looking ahead, just a couple of things to wrap up. I love the potential of what AI can do for users with disabilities. We're obviously not going to watch this TED Talk, but I've linked to it because it's a really interesting talk about this neurotech tool that helps this user with disabilities who literally only has a couple of muscles in his body that function. And in this video, it demonstrates how they're using AI tools to track the processes in his brain to fly a drone around the room. It's amazing to me, the potential of AI. There's certainly challenges. There's accessibility challenges and biases, but I think the future is bright when it comes to AI and how it can support our users with disabilities. And I love even this last little video clip is someone talking about how he hopes AI continues to help in the future. So it's just a short video clip to give you an idea of what some of our users with disabilities are looking for in the future of AI.
Accessibility is a human right.
Hi, I'm John, the man with 1,000 voices. Well, not exactly by choice.
Every time you use an interpreter, like for VRS, in a meeting, a networking event, a presentation, you're using a different interpreter, a different voice that you're often meeting on the spot. Here's the deal. I'm a high energy guy, and my interpreter, not so much. Because when I'm excitedly talking basketball or technology, it sounds more like I'm calmly giving a lecture on code formation.
This is where you come in. We need AI that captures our spirit, our energy, our unique selves. So, how about a hand? I'm really done being a man of 1,000 voices. I'm just looking to sound like me. Let's revolutionize AI for true inclusivity, because real communication isn't just about the words, it's about being who we are. Thanks.
Hosted by How Innovation Center, Perkins.
I love that. So I hope this challenges us to listen to the voices of users with disabilities. We've got some great ideas about how to use AI to really improve their lives. So launching forward, these are just a few challenges from me to you. Just start taking that UDL and that accessibility lens as you talk about AI. We've got to start addressing that accessibility issues of AI tools, like we were doing with the WAVE evaluation tool earlier. We've got to start asking questions about the AI tools. How are disabled represented? How are they included in the data? I hope and pray that that's going to get better over time, but I think we can challenge as we're talking with vendors to say, what does that look like? How is disability included in your data set? And then I hope that there was something in today's session that you can take and turn around and share back out with your teachers about how AI tools can help support our diverse learners. And that's it. What happened? Donna Murray finished on time.
Thank you so much, Donna.